All right, man, I'm going to just say this. I think what some people are calling spiritual warfare is simply a logistics issue. I want to very briefly talk about this video that came across my feed from a church based out of Atlanta called 2819. They have experienced a lot of growth very fast. And with that, their pastor was speaking to their congregation and basically told them that the city has given them 60 days to vacate the building that they currently operate out of. So as I continue to watch the video, he's saying that there are what he refers to as Karens calling city officials every day to get the church removed from the area. He then goes on to say that this is persecution and that this is spiritual warfare. And it's funny, when he said that, it triggered a memory of a video that I saw on TikTok. Because this church is so popular, there are people who are coming from all over the country to attend service. And some of those people are creating mini vlogs, sharing their experience. And a consistent theme of those mini vlogs is that there is a parking issue in that area. There are people who are parking several streets down and having to walk upwards of 20 minutes to get to the building. And so one thing I try to do is see the whole perspective, because it's very easy to say, man, look, we ain't bothering nobody. We just minding our business, doing our thing. And here you come messing up the whole flow, the whole vibe. I ask myself, if I lived in that neighborhood, would I feel a way if there were cars parked all along both sides of the street? And truth be told, probably not. However, I can't assume that because I'm cool with it, that everybody else in the neighborhood is cool with it. And we don't know what type of relationship the church has with the neighbors. Some people could very well not like the fact that their streets are congested with people parking to get to this church. I don't necessarily think that that's a Karen move. A Karen move is when you see a black man and you begin to interrogate him about where he lives. And when that black man tells you that he's your neighbor, you don't believe him. And then you begin to run up and down the street screaming out, he's trying to kill me. And then when you're called out on your behavior, you immediately play victim. That's a Karen to me. You know what I'm saying? I think these are just annoyed neighbors. You know what I'm saying? When I hear the pastor and the congregants and Christians who are fans of the church say that this is an issue of spiritual warfare, what many believers do is witch hunt for persecution. Listen, I don't know why the Western church wants to be persecuted so bad, because when I look at persecution in the Bible, when I look at persecution that exists on the eastern side of the world, America has not experienced a speck of that. In fact, I would say that religious freedom has been commodified, and particularly the Christian faith, as it relates to Christian nationalism, is on center stage. But I want to talk about the mindset that certain types of believers have that lead them to believe that any sort of opposition is demonic. There are two ways that many churches are generally established. The first way, and I don't know how many of y'all know this, but there are organizations that will take you through the entire process of establishing a church, from your logo, the name of your church, to where you should build it, to what the layout of your church should look like. They have statistical evidence that proves the methods in which they implement, down to the science of the sermons that they craft, what personality types should be on ministry teams. Literally everything walks you from beginning to end to successfully establish a church. So there are people who want to establish a church. They got a budget. That organization takes them through all of that. That's one way. And so there's another way that churches are established. There is one person, and they have a burden from God to establish a local presence and nothing else. No money, no resources, just $1 and a dream, right? And what they have to do is recruit people, often friends and family, get those people to believe in the person and what God wants to do. Those people are going to start a church from nothing. Usually services are held in a basement or, they might grow to a school that's not being used on the weekends or something. And in my experience, those types of churches, particularly the ones that experience a lot of growth really fast, they experience that growth supernaturally. There is no data or no statistics. There is no branding organization. It's literally just people being faithful to a call and God meeting that faithfulness with people. But in my experience, what I know is that eventually that type of faith has a ceiling. If you are establishing any sort of presence in a city, there are guidelines that you have to adhere to. And in the case of 2819, it just sounds like they outgrew their space. I watched the pastor tearfully tell his congregation that they needed $5 million in 60 days for the building that he felt like they needed in order to operate. In the words of Marlo Stanfield, that sounds like one of them good problems. Truth be told, I've never seen a real move of God amass a bunch of people who want to submit to the will of Jesus and want to serve their community and all the things that a healthy church should be. I've never seen a group of people that aspire to be a healthy church and God just be like, nah, we just gonna stop right here. Especially if 2819 has caught fire in the way that it seems that they have. Listen, man, you are impacting people everywhere. And I always say, you are never going to eat the fruit from every tree that you plant. So there could be somebody in Utah, in Japan, in Texas, Alabama, Canada, wherever they are being impacted by your ministry. Let me tell you something. I spent 10 years as part of a church plant, growing a very small church. And in that time, I learned a lot about the business of church. And one of the things that I've learned is that there are people with very large pockets who love nothing more than to give to churches who are in similar situations to 2819. And in fact, the last time I checked on this story, they raised most of, if not all of the $5 million that they needed already. But here's the thing about certain types of churches that put a heavy emphasis on the supernatural. They often have trouble transitioning into a more practical faith and receiving practical provision from God because everything they've experienced up until that point has been a certain kind of supernatural. All they know is, I don't know how they did it, but God did it. And what I think this is an opportunity to grow in wisdom and grow in presence and grow in organizational skills. If anything, what happens with a lot of believers is sometimes we have to get pushed into these uncomfortable spaces because when it is time to grow, when it is time to pivot, we drag our feet because we love nothing more than comfort. Oh, and I forgot to say this. Additionally, the type of supernatural faith that these types of ministries have, the faith to apply that practical wisdom, they believe that it is the antithesis to the type of faith that they've needed to get up until this point. Hey, man, I don't think you need a supernatural move of God. You need a real estate agent. You don't need to travail in prayer. You need a business advisor. Maybe now's the time for you to connect with one of those branding organizations and they can teach you how to scale. You know what I'm saying? Like the business of ministry. It is real. And I think a lot of Christians, when we think of business and we think of ministry, we think of churches that take advantage of people and they using tithes to buy helicopters and cars and nice clothes and things like that. Listen, man, the business of ministry to whatever degree requires money and stewardship. And I would dare to say that you honor God when you pivot and allow your organization and your ministry to grow in a new way. So maybe you don't need a faith to tear down strongholds. You need a practical faith to believe God to take you to this new level. We love to talk about those, right? Maybe that new level ain't got nothing to do with the faith that you've needed up until this point. So in closing, I want you to be mature enough in your faith to discern when something is demonic and to discern when something is practical. I want you to embrace practical solutions as evidence of God's provision. Growth is uncomfortable. With that, the faith that you may need to get to the next phase of your life. Any opposition that you experience may not be demonic. It may just be an uncomfortable opportunity to step up and scale up with wisdom. My name is Armand Wake Up, and I am inviting you to free yourself.